that have glimpsed and what I've heard, the budget that I've glimpsed before I assume office, and what I've heard is that no provision is there for fuel subsidy. The fuel subsidy is gone. Subsidy can no longer justify an ever increasing cost in the wake of dry resources.
Was the inaugural speech of President Bola Tinubu during his inauguration as the 5th president in the 4th Republic of the Federal Republic of Nigeria yesterday, May 29th, 2023, another landmark in the political history of our country, Nigeria. And on that note, we welcome you once again to the Punch Digital Studio. This is the Roundtable. My name is Abiodun Adewale, welcoming you on board. Today, we will be talking about something new. As you know, it's a new dawn in the political history of Nigeria. And a new era has just begun yesterday. Perhaps today being the first working day for the president and most governors in the states that we have new governors in them. And we will be talking about the bigger picture of what the future holds for Nigeria, at least in the next 4 years or even more, in the areas of security, oil and gas, particularly as it concerns fuel subsidy and other issues of national interest. We'll be opening some conversation, and I will not be doing the expansion. To do the expansion today, we will have one of our usual guys in the studio already. To my left is the versatile Segun Odunayo. It's time to talk politics and Nigeria. Segun.
Good afternoon, Biodun. Feels good to be here again to talk to our people, do what we know how to do best. This time around, it's in the aspect of, I wanted to say sports, it's in the aspect of politics, and obviously we'll be having a nice day on set today.
Of course, talk about doing what we know how to do best, what the Punch newspaper is known for. And on this particular edition of the Roundtable, we have the biggest man, as far as we are concerned, when it comes to the Punch, the editor of the Punch newspaper, Mr. Dayo Ketola, also joins us on this edition. It's a pleasure to have you, sir.
Thank you very much, Rodo. I'm happy to be here, so thanks for having me. And I hope that the new era that has just started for Nigeria will usher in the best for all of us. I congratulate the country for the successful transition of power from one administration to another. And I hope that the new government will hit the ground running and we can begin to see progress.
All right, talk about hitting the ground running and what the future holds for Nigeria. Perhaps just barely 24 hours after making his inaugural speech, like Segun said yesterday, President Bola Tinubu's honeymoon is over, and he's been taking blows, hits and jabs from everywhere over issues concerning the removal of fuel subsidy. It might not be his doing, because this is an issue that has a trajectory in the history of this country, because if you remember, as far back as 2012, we had one of the biggest protests against the removal of fuel subsidy, and since then it's been from this government to the other government trying to take it off, but none has been able to do it successfully. But this time around, the outgone president, Major General Muhammadu Buhari retired, made it known that it will take effect by June, and on handing over to Bola Tinubu, the president, he made it known in his inaugural speech yesterday that fuel subsidy is gone. And before he would even take a breath after making that speech, queues started returning, and Nigerians are now grappling with fuel scarcity again. A lot of people want to say artificial, but then, editor, it gets tougher before it gets easier, isn't it? What it is as regards fuel now?
I agree with you that it gets so far before it gets easier. But for Nigerians, we Nigerians do a lot of panic buying when policy statements like that are
I
made.
mean, yeah.
So I believe that what we're saying now is the secondary effect of a major policy statement made by President Bola Tinubu. So I think it's still panic buying. I'm not sure that we have a scarcity situation in our hands. But the expectation is that we must be ready for a regime where we would have no fuel subsidy, because it's actually killing this economy. And if ironically, former President Goodluck Jonathan was almost going to remove it, and it was this government in power, that was in the opposition at that time. What did you say?
Who opposed it?
Yes, it wasn't just an opposition per se. They mobilized Nigerians across all fields and sectors against that policy, and the government of the day had no option than to backtrack. So it's ironical that this government that opposed it as an opposition party has come to the realization that we cannot continue with fuel subsidy. So for me, I believe it's something that has to be done in phases, but I think it is the reality that Nigerians must be ready, to accept. But what we have today is still panic buying, and I believe that the NNPC should quickly step in and flood the market with product and ensure that we don't have this. It's too early for us to be having this, especially when we're having a new government. We're still in a celebratory
mood, of course. Now, let me come to you, Shegun.
Yeah.
Safe to say you're a common man, like many of us.
Yeah.
And I'm very sure you had to pay more than the usual to even get to work today. And I know you are. I know what you stand for when it comes to political bias and all of that. But how does this seem for an incoming administration? 11 years ago, you were against it, but now it has to be done. How easy can it get for President Tinubu with this first, let me say, first tackle?
I would like to take us back to the elections and the results. And it was a victory that was not comprehensive, in the sense that if you combine the votes of the opposition parties, it outweighs that of the current president.
A king contest.
So that should tell you that a large number of persons did not want him in power, but unfortunately for the opposition, their votes were scattered. Same thing happened exactly this morning at about 5 a.m. Fewer cars chasing more people, and you know what that means in economics. When you have too much money on the streets chasing few commodities, then obviously there's chaos. The average man on the streets, Mommy Tower in Ujuelegba, Baba Bako, at
maybe somewhere in
Katangora, somewhere in Niger, does not care about which president majorly. They just want a better life. The Baptist, the obedient, the articulated, they show wherever you belong. If life is good for the man on the streets, it is God bless everybody and God bless everybody. But you waking up on the morning of the first day after inauguration, and your normal route is 400, 500, 600 naira more expensive. You do not even care if you voted for or against whoever is on seats. You may not listen too much to Abiodun Adewale, who is on Punch speaking English. You just want what is good for you, your children, and your family. However, we must also understand that this is not the doing of the president, because it has already been sealed by the former president. The deal was that by the end of June, there will be no more payment of subsidy. However, the emphatic statement of subsidy is gone was obviously what put everybody into panic mode. The oil marketers themselves, many oil stations that were selling yesterday suddenly went dead as at yesterday evening. People were on queues for as many as 5-6 hours yesterday, up until 2 a.m. somewhere in Anthony in Lagos. 2 a.m. as at this morning, people were still on the queue. A friend of mine was part of that queue. So it tells you that today is a Tuesday, but it's a Monday, a working day. And it was, if Nigerians begin to tell you, especially Lagosians, tell you what they faced this morning, it isn't too palatable. So we just hope that something is done. The individuals that need to be, who need to be spoken to, understand that this is beyond them, and that subsidy truly has gone, like the president said.
All right, thank you, Shegun. Editor, the last thing you said while making your first comment was about Nigerians facing the reality. Now, let's count the cost of subsidy removal. The former Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, had already told us it takes about 350 naira to 400 naira to subsidize a liter of petrol, and averagely it sells for about 195 to 200 naira at filling stations, and they spend about 250 billion naira monthly on fuel subsidy. This cost, if we now have to divert it, how good does it look for other sectors? Because the oil and gas industry for itself in Nigeria, the budget is even bigger than other sectors combined. So if we take all of this money out of that sector, how does it help the bigger picture, which is the economy and the fate of the common man?
Let me start by saying that we also need to understand the context within which the new president made that statement yesterday. If we are going to remove subsidy, it's not going to be in the immediate. Things will have to be done, in phases. It will be planned. A timeline will be given, and certain things, abilities will have to be put in place. But because an average common man doesn't understand some of this working of the government, they feel that fuel will be scarce, subsidy has been removed. Let's quickly go and buy and sometimes keep. And we can also assume that half of those who are buying are those who want to do business, who wants to hold the product and sell at inflated rates to people who will be in need of fuel in the days to come. That is why it is important for the government, agencies of the government that are in charge, to quickly arrest the situation and ensure that we don't have an artificial scarcity that can even make this government, that can begin to give government a bad name even before it starts working. Yeah, before it starts. But yes, when we talk about subsidy has become a major problem for the Nigerian economy. Why? We are an economy in need. We don't really have surplus. So if we cannot continue to fund a conduit that only enriches certain people. If what government spends or what government claims to be spending on subsidy actually percolates down to every Nigerian household, then we can say it is the right thing to do. There is no economy in the world where things are not subsidized. The government gives subsidies in the UK, they give in the US, but the bottom line is that what kind of subsidies are you giving? The first subsidy does not benefit the Nigerian common man. It does not benefit you and I. It benefits a cartel in the system, and the cost is really so high. So for us, the effect of the removal, which has to be properly planned, the government must explain to Nigerians in the languages that they understand that this is what we are going to do, and this is what we are going to get in return. If the Mama BC in Ujuelegba knows that if we remove subsidy, I'll be able to go to the general hospital, get affordable health care, and be able to send my kids to a government school at affordable rates. If they understand that vision, they understand what the government hopes to achieve, then you can get their buy-in and begin to implement. You cannot implement subsidy removal just by a policy statement by a president. It's not going to work. And you can see the reactions are beginning to come in. But if you look at the pros and cons, removing subsidy it would, at the end of the day, in the final analysis, help our economy. We have to block that leakage. It's not doing anything good for us.
Editor, before we move away from oil and gas and subsidy, perhaps we also have to refresh ourselves. Just last week or about 2 weeks ago, we launched the Dangote refinery, and so it's like a train of something new in that sector. So removal of subsidy, having a refinery, how does it connect in the economics of helping Nigeria, financing the economy?
Well, I think that the Dangote refinery, because we cannot, I don't really want to make comment on the Dangote refinery, but the truth of the matter is that for us to have more Dangote refineries, for us to have more investment in the oil and gas sector, for investors to come in confidently, hoping to recoup their investment and make some good profit. Of course, when investors come in and they make their profit, government also get taxes and returns. So it's a win-win for everybody. For us to have that, we must have an oil and gas system, an oil and gas industry, that is run, in line with global best practices. We cannot be operating, a multi-trillion naira subsidy regime and expect that we would have a strong oil and gas industry where investors will come in and be confident of making or be confident of putting their investment.
Money.
So for me, while I don't want to really comment on the Dangote refinery, I'm saying that we will get more of good news in that sector if we tighten
all the loose ends,
all the loopholes, and then we get rid of subsidy. It's a tough one. It's going to affect everybody. The implication will ripple through all areas of our lives. But bottom line is that, just like you said earlier, it's better for us to get. Imagine if we had done it under Jonathan.
Since 2012, 11 years ago.
Before the telecom sector was liberalized by the government, I remember then that in the University of Ibadan, people will stay almost 24 hours at the gate trying to use the NITEL, what's it called, booths to make calls. But immediately the market was liberalized. Look at what we have achieved in about 20 years. You know? It has almost become like a given that everybody should have a phone. And so that's what we're saying. It's going to be tough, but if the government prepares the people and gets their buy-in, I think that it is in our interest that we get rid of it.
All right, thank you very much. Segun, let's talk about the bigger picture now. Economic prosperity, and that is one area that benefits everybody because oil itself does not even represent the major percentage of Nigeria's economy. But then, what it brings in terms of import and exports is why it looks like
where we're existing.
The grey area where the country is even existing itself. But now let's look at the bigger picture of economy. Many areas that we can look into: agriculture, oil itself, and of course, eventually pay attention to the GDP of the country, which over the years now, and the projection we are looking at between now and 2027. How do we get there? Because from the renewed hope agenda, the manifesto that President Bola Tinubu brought, the projected GDP up till about 2027 is around 780 billion naira. So
that's a tall order.
How do we get to that tall order?
Yeah, in political science, they say the economy is the substructure upon which the superstructure lies. Other spheres, other fields are the superstructure. The substructure is the economy. If the economy is not existing, nothing works. If the economy does not work, every other field, including entertainment, is probably dying off because nobody pays attention. But I remember when this manifesto got released and people were asking questions. These things are just written down in this book. These are words in a paper. How will this come about? How will this come alive? How do we plan to make this truly happen? Of course, we have the potential, no doubt about that. We have the groundnut industry. We have even the maize industry. Palm oil itself, it's what some countries are using to survive. Oil is what certain countries are using, only oil. Some countries like the United Kingdom don't really have much, but they are surviving on getting taxes because of how people, the inflow of persons. So we know we have the capability of getting these things done. The how is our problem, and I think that's what many persons will be expecting from the Bola Tinubu-led newly inaugurated government. We want to see round pegs in round holes. We want to see square pegs in square holes. Individuals who have the understanding of these fields, people who have been in their various economies are doing. The funny thing is, you have people doing wonders regardless of the field you want to talk about. We have persons that can cross over from the private sector into the public sector and allow these guys undo the real thing, allow the politicians sit in the background, probably doing the politicking. But when it comes to the business of the day, guys that understand how to move the country forward, guys that are doing it in other countries of the world, in the first countries of the world, I think that is what we need to do. Oil itself, the biggest thing we have right now, but if we look around us, we can see many other things that can work. And the good thing is that the president promised when he was campaigning to get many of these things fixed, and it remains to be seen if promises will come alive.
All right. Editor, there are other issues that we have to point to, particularly tax, import, forex, and maybe corruption itself in the bigger picture of Nigeria's economy. But as someone who's been in the out of business reporting, how does tax and import substitution, how does it help us at a time like this that we are trying to reach a particular target between now and the next 4 years?
Well, it's for us to achieve. I mean, for this government to be seen, I mean, the new to be seen as meeting its goals and to be considered as successful. there has to be a holistic approach, to governance. And I'm going to start from what Ayomide said earlier about putting. I'm going to address the tax and import issue, but I want to quickly talk about the need for us to get round pegs to fill round holes. I was shocked when the former
Education
Minister
Minister
of Education said he knew next to nothing about education when he was appointed. I was shocked. And I was like, yes, even if that was the case, it wasn't helpful that he had to say that in public. Because it means that the man wasted wasted our time, wasted the country's time, and made a mess of the educational sector. So that's why I had to give you that instance, is to use it as a basis that for us to achieve, for this government to achieve what it has said to achieve, you need to get the right people, to man critical areas. For us, we must reduce import. We are very import dependent, which is a major problem. But how do we reduce this import dependency if we don't even have power? Because there's no way you can power an economy with about 13,000 megawatts available capacity and maybe about 5,000 megawatts actual available capacity with your transmission, capacity not up to 6,000 megawatts. So the bottom line is that we need to address the critical frameworks that can help us, increase taxation, that can also help us reduce importation, that can generate employment. I mean, good employment for Nigerians, not just employment for the sake of employment. Employment that can take them home and make them live, comfortable, at least relatively comfortable life. So for this government, must start very strong by getting the right people, to do the job. It is also he was talking about bringing in technocrats. Yes, we need to bring in technocrats, but it's difficult for a government of this nature to solely rely on technocrats. You also need the politicians, because they were the one who did the job to bring the government to power. It was a very keenly contested election, so you need a combination of the technocrats and the politicians to come together. But let them be people who know. For instance, how do you appoint someone who knows next to nothing about education to be education minister? What were you going to get in the first place? Nothing. It was going to be disaster. So that is one mistake this government must not make. There's no point being politically correct about it. Get people who can deliver to do the job. It's not about sentiment, but of course you must also take care of the politicians if you want to have peace, and get results.
All right, Shegun, let's look at exchange rates. As at yesterday, I saw some of the updates you were giving about the pros and cons of some of the statements in the inaugural speech of President Tinubu. Now, we all know that the Naira over time has been crippled in comparison with other currencies, particularly the dollar. And now we are at a critical time where people will now begin to think that most of the things that this government will have to do must strengthen the Naira. And before now, we've had currency redesign and other things and all of that. So what does all these things, what does it mean for the strength of the Naira going forward?
I think I'll start with redesign. The redesign policy had always been a controversial one from the very beginning. And just a few months in, we know little or next to nothing about what is going on with the redesign. They did not continue with printing. I doubt you have, out of the monies you have with you at the moment, you have any of the new monies with you. So that itself looked like they didn't plan it properly. And about floating the Naira, this is basic economics that a theory level economics student should understand. So one begins to wonder why people at top level didn't float the Naira in the first place. I mean, the Nigerian government has no business regulating anything. Allow market forces determine the play. Simple. Buying and selling will simply move according to the way it's supposed to be. Don't peg anything. I think that was just basic. Look at what happened